Okay, so can you believe it's June 2022 already, right around the corner? Today we're going to talk about the June 22 forecast. And oops, where am I at here? I'm on the wrong slide. June 22 forecast, sorry. And I have a nice calendar here. My friend and astrologer Casey Scott at Gold Star Astrology puts these together. So he put a nice one together, and I'm going to be working off of quite a few of the things in that in his calendar, and we're going to look at the most important shifts in June 2022. A lot of big stuff. Mars is going into Aries. We have several changes where Mercury turns direct, Saturn turns retrograde, and whatnot. Full moon coming up in Jeshta Nakshatra as well, in Scorpio. So quite a lot ahead. Sorry, let me just pull this over here for a second. All right. So, and if you want to support the channel, again, this is a free class where I'm going to talk about these things in a lot of depth. Please like and subscribe and share the video and the channel so that people will also know that this is available. I think this will be very helpful for people to know how to get through the next month with the shifts and changes that are ahead. So again, like and share and subscribe. Leave a comment, a nice comment. Tell me how great I am. I like that. No, it's fine. And if you're watching on other platforms as well. And as many of you know, this is part of a yearly forecast that I did that I actually did at the end of last year. And I've talked about all these important shifts in that 2022 forecast. We're right around here now. We just had the solar eclipse in Aries at the end of April. So we're still in the eclipse cycle. Notice how this last month, a lot of intensity for sure, and with all kinds of Supreme Court decisions that affect leaked memo. I talked about that. That happened right as we were having the solar eclipse, when the leaked memo about the abortion, Roe v. Wade. We're now here in the U.S., faced again with like mass shootings and whatnot. As soon as Venus left Aries and left Pisces and went into Aries, and Mars and Jupiter are joined. So there's a lot of intensity right now, as we talked about this, solar eclipse. So again, you can get that for free, and we still have many big shifts left here in 2022. Mars, Rahu are about to join, and they're, going to get very intense around the middle end of the summer. So in about, a month and a half, 2 months, Mars and Rahu are going to get very close in Aries. Saturn, Jupiter will both be retrograde. Then we have another solar eclipse later in the year, and then Mars goes retrograde, and Mars at the end of the year. So if you want to see how those 10 important shifts will affect you, because what I do is I also did personal forecasts where I take these 10 important shifts and explain them from each of the 12 signs, because that's really important, not just that you understand and be able to align with what's happening in general, but then to know how they're going to affect you based on your sidereal rising sign. Then you can get that as well. So with that said, I will jump in here with the June 2022 forecast. Now, again, I'm recording this on Friday, May 27th. So June starts on Wednesday, next Wednesday, if you're watching this live, Wednesday, obviously Wednesday, June 1st. And you see, we start getting the main shifts come in here and happen. I'll just read through these in the calendar first, and then we'll start looking at some of them on the actual, astrology chart. So one of them, of course, you see is Mercury retrograde ends and the Mercury retrograde is going to end on Friday the 3rd. And so again, Mercury turned retrograde, and I believe he just poked his head in Gemini, then turned retrograde, and now he's going to turn direct again on Friday, June 3rd. So he stops retrograde, and he's like stationary for a couple days, then he starts to move forward. Again, I'm going to interpret these things, but then Saturn turns retrograde. He begins his retrograde motion, basically starts to stationary retrograde on the next day, the 4th of June. Then, as it says here in the calendar here, there's not a lot else that is so significant. I'm going to go through each of the days, though, but so you will see the shifts that do happen as the moon is going through the different, rashis and whatnot. And it's going to culminate in a full moon on June 14th, second consecutive full moon in Scorpio, because the last full moon, this recent lunar eclipse we had, was in Scorpio. So in very early Scorpio, if you remember, was like about 1 degree, 2 degrees. So this one it was less than 1 degree. So this is the second full moon in Scorpio after the new moon in Taurus, which is coming up in a couple days. And then the sun also goes into Gemini the next day. So again, as you could see, this full moon in Scorpio is like at the last degrees of Scorpio, with the sun being at the last degree of Taurus, which is the next new moon. And then Venus Rahu conjunction will be like exact as we get in June 16th. And then Venus goes into Taurus, then Venus moves into Taurus the next day. So again, Venus Rahu conjunction will be pretty much exact, like right there on around the 16th, and the 17th Venus goes into Taurus. Then, as you see now, this Mars in Aries, Casey has a good description there of the Mars in Aries, where there's a lot of fire now that's going to be prominent and predominant starting, and that even leads to the indication that I have here where it says cosmic blow-ups and war. Again, I have that as July 16th to August 10th, but it really begins when Mars enters Aries, which is here at this point. Oops, sorry about that. Which is here at this point, pardon me, on June 26th. So as you see, on June 26th, that's when the cycle begins, because that's when Mars goes in to Aries. And then we have the new moon in Gemini in Ardra Nakshatra, June 28th. So those are really the shifts that we will look at, or that we'll focus on as we go through the chart. Let me take a quick drink here. Someone says, "Hey, Sam, I've been following you since you tied up with Kapil. I'm from India, and I'm glad you are learning Vedic astrology." Yeah, I've known Kapil a long time. It's a little bit reversed, though. I didn't learn since I met him. I've been doing it here on YouTube since 2007. So, but yeah, I've known Kapil a long time. So thanks for showing up. I have to chuckle a little bit because he's very well known, and he's done a great job over the years bringing it to people. But he called me the OG before. Anyway, so let's look at this. Let me go pull this chart up here. Okay, so where are we at? Okay, yeah. So as we go through, as you remember, the first big thing that we looked at was Mercury stops being retrograde. So you'll see this big R will then change here on the 3rd. And if you watch the degrees, I'll just move it for a few days, and you'll see the degrees of Mercury will barely change. That's called stationary retrograde. So that's the 3rd. On the 4th, it's like barely moved 159. Again, that's like nothing. 208. It's basically stationary. It's moving a little bit, but it's not moving hardly at all. And you could see even that day before, it's 155 for 2 days in a row. So Mercury will stationary direct for like 2 days. You'll see when we hit Saturn, Saturn turns retrograde. Watch how long he stays at the same degree. 104. Then you see 105. Now watch when the R comes for Saturn, who begins to retrograde the next day. Watch and see how long he stays at 105. 60. This is June 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. Okay, now he moves 1 degree. 8. Again, I say 1 degree. It's not 1 degree. It's 1/10 of a degree, right? It's like, look, so Saturn is stationary. He's at this 1 degree for, look, we're here at the 18th. He's still barely moved an inch for almost the whole month. Look at how long he stays there. So he begins the stationary at 102. Again, that's 1 degree and 2 seconds. 1 degree and 2 seconds. So even when he gets to 0, 0, 0 and 2 seconds, that's 1 degree. So you'll see he's stationary. He's not going to hit 2 seconds the whole month. He's still, so the whole rest of the month. So he's stationary at 1 degree for until July 10th. That's how long Saturn stays stationary, for a month. He's going to be at that same degree. So this is what stationary is. This is stationary retrograde, okay? Just to show you that. You never know what you're going to get with Sam. He's always going to teach you something about this stuff. This is why we're here. Okay. So this is Saturn turns stationary retrograde. So I'll explain what those things mean. Now, again, Mercury turned retrograde like 3.5 weeks earlier. So again, that was a time to be reflecting on our story, getting things organized that need to be organized, updating things. I've had an issue, been updating a website and getting all of this stuff together. Retrograde cycles are where you go back and fix and make things better eventually with the reversals that might come. Things get improved. So the Mercury retrograde is all the details and all the information that we reflect on. And that we need to reflect on in order to organize and make it better, right? To improve it. So that, that process has been going on for several weeks now. And so what you can know is that on June 3rd, he begins moving forward again. So we'll start to see these things moving forward. If you're still in the holding pattern around several things, which I still am, even with my website, never had a update and whatnot be this intense of getting worked out and making me have to maybe, I've had to put a lot of things on hold while it gets worked out. But anyway, it's going to get resolved here soon, but it'll be an improvement overall once it's done. So again, now Saturn moving forward, or I'm sorry, Saturn moving retrograde, we're now going to be reflecting on these Saturn themes of what to commit to, what to concentrate our energy on, larger themes, not everyday themes like Mercury with our communication, reflecting on things we've said, things people have said to us. Mercury retrograde is often a good time to reflect on things. And then when Mercury starts moving forward again, which he's going to do starting on the 3rd, it's maybe a good time to, again, maybe apologize for some things that you've done wrong after you've reflected on them. Maybe not apologize, but fix some things after they've broken. So this is the benefit of Mercury retrograde. Saturn, and again, that's Mercury. He's going to be moving forward. So you're going to be moving forward on these things on the 3rd. Then Saturn begins retrograde on the 4th and will kind of be in that stationary holding pattern for a month or so before he really starts to move and actually starts moving retrograde. So you might be feeling like in a holding pattern, like I'm not sure whether to commit to this or commit to that as he's stationed, but you're going to be really concentrating on those Saturn themes. And again, the reason to get like the forecast that I talk about is because That's going to be different for every sign. Saturn pokes his head into Aquarius. Like for me, that's my 9th house. Then he's going to go retrograde back into my 8th house again. So that's what I talked about in the free forecast and what I talked about in the personal forecast. For Gemini, it's 8th and 9th house, that being the personal forecast that I mentioned here on these personal forecasts. If you're a Cancer, for example, Saturn moves into your 8th house where he's stationary, retrograde, and then he goes back into your 7th house, which is where he's been. So that determines what this Saturn retrograde and stationary retrograde and all of that means for you personally. It's based on that your sidereal ascendant and where Saturn is in the sky. Okay. So that's what it's going to mean. So, that's like that's about a 5-month transit, Saturn going retrograde. So then, as you see, if we just run the chart here, this is the 5th when Saturn goes retro. Well, it actually starts on the 4th. He turns direct. Again, these are hair splitting because he's changing direction, especially with Saturn. It's going to, like you said, it's going to hang out in this degree for weeks. If you got a planet there. I have my Saturn pretty much right there, only it's in Capricorn at like 29. So all of this is stationary retrograde, but right on my natal Saturn in the 8th house. So I might die. I'm laughing. It's 8th house of death. I'm not going to die. I'll never die. No. But by the way, astrologers could see this. Oh, Saturn's going over your 8th house. Saturn in your 8th. It's 8th house, death, 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 death. Try to scare me to death over it. But I know better. But anyway, so if we go forward here, you see the moon going around and you see these planets. Again, Venus is already in Aries. Venus went into Aries about a week ago from where I'm at right now. And again, Mars and Jupiter are joined. So these are just things that start at the beginning of the month here with Mars, Jupiter in Pisces, Venus in Aries with Rahu. Again, Mercury is retrograde with the Sun in Taurus, etc. So again, as we go forward here, you see that not a lot of these planetary situations change. Mercury keeps going, etc. All the planets keep going. And the next big event is this full moon, excuse me, right here. Go back here. It's on this day, on the 13th. It's actually, I guess it's the 14th if you look at it in UT time. So this is on the 14th. Let me just move the hours here. I got to be a stickler. What do we have? So we're looking at the exact opposition. Oh, yeah, it's actually even here in the West. So, all right. So here on the East Coast, yeah, so it's pretty much, West Coast, it's like the 14th. So this is that full moon in Jeshta. Of course, I'll do a dedicated forecast for this full moon, but again, this is the second one because remember the first one was the lunar eclipse that happened at very, very early degree here. So you see this sun going through Taurus for pretty much, for this first half of the month of June is what's going on here. And then we reach this full moon. So again, the middle of the month is when we have that big lunation cycle of the full moon in Scorpio. And it's the second consecutive one. So, this is significant in just that it just literally means what it means, that it's a lot of this emotional Scorpio energy that we've been experiencing. A lot of that triggering paranoia. Again, I'm recording this on May 27th. That last lunar eclipse in Scorpio was, that was whatever that day was, May 14th or something like that. And since then, again, a lot of darkness revealed, things again, emotional triggering, even like emotional trauma and stuff like that, coming out. And again, it's kind of a cycle of that, because the full moons are really showing how our sort of like limbic emotional responses are wired for a particular time, a particular cycle. And so this is what we can expect, for really the month of June as well. We're going to be still feeling a lot of that Scorpio frustration, emotional triggering, even sort of emotional trauma, sort of traumatized. I don't know about you, but here in the US, the recent shootings, I mean, again, we've said this many times. Again, I'm a citizen of the US, but we've had these two terrible shootings that have happened. One was a racially motivated shooting in Buffalo, and then barely a week later, someone comes into a school and slaughters children. And again, we've said before, this is going to mean some change. It probably won't, because of the corruption and the absolute frustration with people, with our political system, and the corruption that keeps this terrible system of slaughter in place. Again, in case you don't know, we have a political system where politicians are bought. They're bought by the NRA, which is National Rifle Association, and they get a lot of money from them. So they do things to proliferate guns, and we're about to boil over. And this is one of the reasons why I said it last year, that this Mars Rahu in Aries that's coming up, I haven't said nuclear war and all that. I've said more things like civil war. And I think we could have a major, gigantic, in America, we're about to blow. And many people think it's going to come from the right, conservatives. I think it's going to be everybody else, because most people do not agree with all these guns. They don't agree with all this stuff. We have minority rule right now, taking away women's rights to a safe and legal procedure that's been codified law for 50 years. And all those justices stood up before they were sworn in as justices and said, no, it's settled law. It's settled law. They get on the bench. We're going to overturn it. Guns. Everybody in the country thinks we need to have some sensible gun legislation. No, we're not going to do it. No, we're not going to do it. Thoughts and prayers. It's mainly mental health. No, we're not going to do it. How much more can the people take? And this is the people. This isn't, oh, Sam's being a lib. Look, if you don't agree with this, then you're in the minority. We already know this. The majority of people want these things, and we have minority rule preventing it. Again, how much more can the people take? I'm saying this in the context of this Scorpio full moon pain and boiling over, like emotional trauma. It's like collective trauma. And by the way, this is America, but we still have this war in Ukraine. We have other traumatizing world events that are happening. And again, it's not just going to happen in America, but we see this around the world. Again, we have this war in Ukraine that's still going on. So again, Mars Rahu, which happens, as you see, even as I'm doing this chart, Mars is at 20 degrees and it's about to enter. This is later in the month of June. But a way to contextualize these two full moons in Scorpio, what's been happening the last couple weeks, even here in America, right? Well, right on the eclipse, we had that leaked memo about they're going to overturn Roe Wade. Women won't have access to safe legal abortions. And by the way, there's propaganda out there, but something like 92% of them happen within the first 12 weeks or something like that. The nightmare scenarios are incredibly rare. Again, all you need to do is do your research. Quote, if you want to say do your research. The rest of the world thinks this is absolute insanity that America is doing this, and it is, because that has nothing to do with policy. So, again, that started this eclipse cycle here in the U.S., but then since then, again, right around that eclipse or right after, we had these mass shootings. Now, this frustration and trauma we're in that cycle right now. This eclipse cycle is still going on until the next new moon, as I'm recording this on May 27th. And that next new moon is on the 30th, I believe. I'll go back and look. But so this is how people say, well, what does it mean, 2 full moons in Scorpio? It means this. Does it feel like it? That was a debilitated eclipsed moon. When I said it at the time, I said, this is serious business. It doesn't have to be that particular day. This cycle. We're in this cycle. A debilitated eclipsed moon. I said it at the time. This is no joke. This is times when people can kill themselves. And the trauma, collective trauma, personal trauma, even if you don't usually get traumatized, we're going to see traumatic events. And that includes people that wind up perpetrating these crimes. They're living under these conditions right now as well. And by the way, people who want to say, oh, it's a mental health issue. Yeah, it's mental health mixed with the easy access to firepower. So these people that did these heinous killings have mental health issues. But there's mental health issues all over the world. They're not massacres all over the world because only in America can they go in and buy guns and have access to them to slaughter people when they're having their mental health trauma events. That's the difference. And those who want to do nothing about it in the political realm will just try to falsely equivocate that it's mental health. Well, mental health, America's not an outlier in mental health. We're an outlier in being awash in the sea of guns. It makes no sense that a person can walk in on his 18th birthday and buy 2 automatic rifles with hundreds of rounds of ammunition without a question being asked. He can't even buy beer. You've got to be kidding me. You have to get a license to drive a car. Anything else, I'm not even going to get into the argument because pretty much it's about 90% of the country disagrees with that. But yet, hey, NRA is going to buy politicians. What can we do? Mental health issue, this, that. All the rhetoric. More guns, more guns, more guns. The solutions, more guns, more guns. Turn the schools into prisons. Harden the facilities. One door in. This kind of stuff. People are going to get, how much more can people take? So I think when we get this Mars, Rahu, and Aries in this summer, we're going to see this stuff is going to start to blow. And it's scary. So when I said, and those of you who watch my forecast know, I don't say this stuff that often, but that last debilitated moon, right at the debilitation point of Scorpio, I said, this is serious. And this is what happens. Serious transformation. People, you see the paranoia, the craziness, the white supremacy. What the guy that burst into Buffalo was this critical race theory, or was it that? I don't know. Yeah, it was the replacement theory. That's what it is. I'm sorry. I forget all of the, I can't keep up with all of the right-wing triggering replacement theory stuff. People are triggered, and by the way, part of the mental health issue in this country is all of the propaganda that comes at people, scaring the bejesus out of them about replacement theory and this and that. Think that doesn't contribute to mental health problems? So this is the sort of backdrop of this debilitated moon, and the people that have these issues in America also have access to more firepower than the cops. That's why the cops on this shooting in Texas were afraid to go into the building because the guy had all these machine guns. The cops didn't even go in. I don't want to get too sidetracked on that, but I also don't want to bypass it because it's real. And if you're feeling this sort of trauma around this thing, and again, spiritual people, oh, he's talking politics, get over it. All right. I'm a human being who's alive on earth, and I see the suffering. If you don't like it, leave. I don't want to hear it. But a lot of us feel this collective trauma. And again, if you're triggered by what you think is politics, and I'm a liberal, again, just get lost. I don't care. This is common sense stuff. But it's okay to feel this, and it's okay to be spiritual. I still have my practices. I'm still doing this, but we're scared and in pain about this world that we're living in. And this is what this stuff looks like when you see these debilitated eclipsed planets and all this stuff. So these are the times that's what this stuff looks like. So we'll move on now. So if we keep going here, June 14th, again, then we also have, as you see right here, Sun is about to shift. As you see, it's at this last degree. So again, this full moon as well. These two planets are in their Sandhi points. Very unpredictable energy here. Very last degrees. They're changing signs. This moon especially is in the Gandanta point. Expect this, again, this is another, I'm going to say it, very potentially dangerous day, dangerous time. We might see right around this time another crazy thing like this, another weird shooting or something. By the way, Jeshta and Mula also have to do with things like assassinations, and maybe this is the stuff that's going to happen. Somebody's going to go kill like a senator or something, or congressperson or something like that. We saw after Roe v. Wade. By the way, this last thing. People peaceful protest individuals outside the houses of the Supreme Court justices. By the way, I'm not saying I think that stuff should happen. But what happened immediately after? You want to see how fast the Congress moves? Immediately after, they all passed a law that said you're not allowed to go near Supreme Court justices. Now that's like a law. You see how fast they can move on laws and do things when they're worried about themselves? They're the elites. Oh my God, don't protest outside the house of a Supreme Court justice. They can pass laws like that when they care about it. These people know that the reason we're suffering all these murders is because of guns. They all know it. But we saw also after Roe v. Wade, again, they start having these vigils. This is a foreshadowing. What option are you leaving people? You're leaving people no options. Take away their rights, even though vast majority of people do not want it overturned. Vast majority of people, 90% want sensible gun laws. No, we're going to do nothing. What option do you leave people? Peacefully protest outside their house. No, you can't do that. You're going to start seeing people blow. And I mean, you might start seeing some assassinations of these public officials. And I don't want that. I'm not saying it's justified. Of course it's not. I'm saying these type of things can be a catalyst. Imagine if someone assassinates, I'm not going to say any names, but something like it's a symbol of the right or the left or whatever, and what that would do. These are the kinds of things that we're looking at. Assassination or some other kind of, again, any kind of thing could happen in America. We're awash with guns and crazy people like the rest of the world, and we're descended upon constantly with propaganda inspiring this kind of stuff. Where does he think this stuff's going to lead? This is a very dangerous time. I said before, this year is going to be, I don't know how it's going to play out, but we can see this lunation right here is no joke either. It's not an eclipse, but you got a debilitated Gandanta moon. Again, Venus, Rahu are very close as well. Sun is right at the edge, and Mars is about to go into Aries. Again, there could be a very unpredictable catalyzing event, something that happens around the middle of June, that could lead to a lot of stuff. And then by the time you get Mars, Rahu, and Aries, it's 10 times worse. So yes, I'm putting that out there because this is no joke. And again, people, watch your mental health. Beyond this type of social triggering and stuff like that, again, and I say this not as a bypassing, but as a reality, there's also enormous spiritual power in these times. And it's definitely true. To remain devoted to the truth is also really powerful when we have these lunations and these difficult cycles. And trying to not get too sucked up into the drama and the trauma of it is a challenge. And showing up with something beyond, or something inspiring and uplifting and transformative, if you're in these type of communities, is also not just possible, but in some ways, maybe your duty on some level is to hold that higher perspective and be like, yes, but ultimately we're beyond these worldly events. And the best we can do is be the master of every moment, because karma and our life still arrives in the form of one beautiful moment after the next. Even though we see the trauma and suffering and the frustration and disappointment of the world and in the world. So again, this Jupiter in Pisces it makes it even more important to dial in these pure teachings, so that as you tend to lose yourself in these things, you can reconnect with that which is beautiful and transcendent and beyond, because that's always there. And by the way, this Saturn retrograde also, it's very powerful, because Saturn is in Aquarius. It's going to be retrograding back into his sign of Capricorn. So Saturn is the ruler of these two signs. So as much as these things are happening in the world, our connection, again, it makes it even more powerful to be dialed into that devotional experience and to be more committed to that which is beyond and that which is transcendent, and to introspect about whether or not we're living in that reality, which is that Saturn retrograde, and to turn away from trying to save the world and fix the world. We can do what we can do, but we still get every moment. And that's the power of that Saturn retrograde in Aquarius and Capricorn. But we're also seeing the sign of Aquarius is that sign of culture and our relationship with the world. So we're also seeing Saturn poking his head in Aquarius and going retrograde as revealing all of this terrible corruption that we're seeing. Again, not just in America, but around the world. All of the autocracy, the rise of autocratic regimes and thinking in response to failed democratic corporatism, capitalism. In a larger context, that's why we're seeing a rise, or the potential rise, of all of the neo-fascist authoritarians, because capitalism, corporatism, the corporate capitalist corporatocracy is failing more and more. So it gives rise to people that will come and say, I can fix it. So I'm mentioning that because this Saturn going through Aquarius for the next couple years is going to really show a lot of that focus. So I think there's hope around the corner. And again, Saturn in Aquarius, since he poked his head in there, we're seeing even more and more. And the hopeful message is that perhaps this disgust with where we're at right now, with the obvious tragedy that we've seen. I'm speaking about America, but there are other situations as well, can maybe be a catalyst for realizing that this is not sustainable, that they need to do something. And by the way, this Saturn in Aquarius is part of that harsh reality, that cold bucket of water over the head of these people who think you can just keep taking away rights or functioning through this corporatocracy without changing anything. Saturn in Aquarius is like going, wait, hold it. We better chill out here. We better we better give them something, which is really all they would be doing anyway. The whole system needs to be changed. But even those in power at some point are like, oh, wait a minute, this is a little too much. So as we move on, the next important shifts are, as we said, this sun goes into in the next couple days. Oh, this is hours. See, I changed the hours. You get day. Yeah, so this next day on the 15th, the sun goes into Gemini. So that middle of the month, we have this shift from the sun in Taurus, which is where it is until the 15th, into the sun in Gemini. So this is going to put an emphasis on ideas, communication, and rather than feeling in that sort of stuck protective mode, it will be more, looking for solutions and ideas and communication. And we also have, again, this Venus Rahu are like exact. You see how fast Venus is moving here. 2552 on the 14th, 2704. It's a little more than a degree, so it's about average speed. On the 15th, on the 16th, now it's passed on that day by the 16th, and then by the 17th, it's right at the edge, and then the 18th, it goes into Taurus there on the 18th. Venus will enter its own sign. It's probably late it may be late in the day on the 17th, but on the 18th is that first day that Venus is now set up in Taurus. That's going to be a very stabilizing time. Venus going into Taurus will definitely be more stabilizing and settling, and less of that Venus Rahu. Venus Rahu, Venus in Aries, which again, you see Venus very much about preserving the beauty, about maintaining that social order and social connection. While it was in Taurus, it goes into Aries, and it's like this spasm, this triggering. Of course, and because Aries is holding Rahu, it's even more susceptible and explosive. So, especially from the 18th forward, we'll feel a different energy throughout the month, because again, now the sun is in Gemini and we have Venus, Mercury both in Taurus, which is definitely more grounding, more stabilizing. So that could be a time to really connect, sort of, even things like around your home and within your family unit and within your, friends and whatnot. Taurus is very much about values, friends, things like that. You'll feel a deepening and a reconnection there if you might be feeling some disconnect for the earlier part of the month because of Venus in Aries, which is more about being a strong individual. One second. So by the 19th, we see that shift. And it's a very powerful connection here, Venus, Mercury, and Taurus. They're very supportive of each other, and you see they'll be together there for the rest of the month. So that's a nice shift from the 19th on. You'll see that the next big shift after that Venus goes into Taurus is the Mars in Aries. That starts on the 27th. So again, now we're going to get Mars, Rahu, and Aries starting on June 27th. It's going to go through until early August. So again, by the time we get the end of June, we might start really seeing some deeper frustrations boil over, and again, social outpourings and unrest and rhetoric get even more excited. And any places where there's war or potential for war, again, all kinds of possibilities. And, sometimes people are like, for example, something could break out in like Taiwan or other hot button places where there's contentiousness. Any moment, Israel and Palestine, it could be a new assassination or a new thing. People are like, oh, you didn't predict that. Look, I don't have time to sit around and look at every country and their karma or whatever. But you can see that these places, or a mass shooting or this or that or assassination, these are times when you can see volatility and frustration boil over. So again, the end of the month, after that respite from like the 19th until about the 27th, again, we can look at that. Venus goes into Taurus the 19th. By the 19th, it's pretty well established. 18th, 19th. Venus, Mercury here, Mars, Jupiter in Pisces. Again, this is a very good time to, as I say, reconnect with friends, family, enjoy, teachings and whatnot, all of that, because we have this Mars, Jupiter in Pisces. By the way, Mars and Jupiter in Pisces fighting for what we know is right and what inspires us. Don't think that doesn't include people who do these killings and stuff. If you've listened to me ever about Jupiter, you've heard me say that Jupiter is fanaticism. And someone who thinks, again, the person who does this great replacement theory shooting, it's got Mars, Jupiter written all over it. Now that's an abhorrent expression of it. But the person is fired up around what they believe. And especially people who are now, there's so much propaganda and they believe the solutions are found at the end of a gun, or to protect us from the black people, or the people are going to replace us, or those who are trying to teach our kids critical race theory, or whatever it is. This has a lot of Jupiter, Mars energy behind it. Anytime there's violence, Mars energy is behind it. But that's one expression of it. Another expression of it is being the authentic spiritual warrior for yogis and spiritual people. Like, for example, while this stuff was going on, last weekend, me and my students at my school, we got together, and that Mars, Jupiter, Venus was aligned to this incredible spiritual retreat, learning astrology, connecting into the deepest, and channeling all of that intensity into the highest good, the highest stuff you can do with your mind, pretty much, the highest transcendent teachings, which is that Pisces energy. And so I don't want it to just be that, oh yeah, it's all just violence, or it's all just, no, it's also, I don't know about you, but I do my spiritual practices every day, and they're really powerful now because of the Mars, Jupiter as well. The discipline and devotion are in alignment, because discipline is Mars, devotion is Jupiter and Pisces. And again, understand, people that wind up doing these crazy things, they're disciplined and devoted to that philosophies, and they need a better philosophy. They need a better teaching, and we don't have a lot of good ones right now, at least in the public. Particularly if people are finding their solutions in the craziness now, whether it's one political party or another. Both of them are craven, and there's no solution with it. Solution is people need to wrestle the power away from corporatocracy, capitalistic failure. But we're here, and we're seeing the violence, particularly in America, because we're so awash in violent potential, but around the world. But this divine potential is there, and it's always there. It doesn't mean we don't feel the pain of this other thing, but we have to be careful not to get subsumed by it, even if once in a while it's hard to not feel the heartbreak. But within that, you still have to reckon with your salvation as a transcendent being. And this Mars, Jupiter up here, and Jupiter's in Pisces for the next year. Even after Mars goes into Aries and whatnot, Jupiter is still up there. So as you see, Mars goes into Aries And by the way, let me just look at this. That's what starts on the 20th, or actually what starts here on the 19th. This is a very nice chain. The moon is going to hit all these planets. Now, again, on the 18th, we have moon Saturn. Again, very good for concentration, meditation, silence, stillness, solitude, peace. And this this begins this sort of train where the moon goes and passes all these planets in the sky. A good exercise for you will be to notice the moon and how you feel on these days as the moon passes over Saturn in the sky and then is influenced by Saturn for a couple of days. Then it gets close to Jupiter in the sky. Then it gets close to the, and again, the Jupiter Mars. So again, the 18th, 19, 20, 21, you see there's moon Jupiter are like exact on the 21st. This is the first day of summer, right? Next day, it's right on, it's still up there, but look up in the sky. You'll also see them there. This will be around midnight. And you'll see that this this moon, Jupiter, Mars are up there in the sky, very bright. And then he goes into Aries, passes over Rahu. And again, notice that shift. Notice when moon Mars is in Pisces with Jupiter. And then notice when moon goes into Aries, join Rahu. Then notice when moon goes into Taurus, join Venus and Mercury on the 25th. Very exalted moon on the 25th and 26th. Then we get the new moon there in Ardra at the end on the 28th, like right around the end, right after Mars goes into Aries. So again, the end of the month, by the 28th, Mars is in Aries with Rahu. And we have a new moon in Ardra. Again, crank up the drama here because Ardra is related to Shiva, this destructive potential. Stay alert, folks. Stay alert. Stay focused and stay alert. This is how this is what we've incarnated into. That new moon, again, very transformative here, and very much about how are you transforming? What are you transforming? What are you dialing in? Because that new moon in Ardra, in Gemini, again, Gemini is that sign of intelligence, discrimination. When people have a lot of Gemini energy, they can adapt and they can change, and they want to change and they want to adapt. They don't stay stuck in the ideology that makes us a crazed gunman or terrorist or something, that we're fixed and we can't shake it. We can't think our way out of it, or we can't maneuver skillfully. Gemini is like, it brings more intelligence there, but along the way, it destroys the existing darkness and ignorance. That's the Ardra quality of Gemini. So this is really what that next new moon cycle is going to be like. That's what it's going to be bringing. And that'll kind of really, in many ways, I think more than anything, really end the previous new moon in Taurus, the one that we're having in a couple days, really brings the eclipse cycle to an end. But again, because we still have that debilitated lunation cycle that comes, it still feels kind of hung up in that Scorpio energy. This one, I think, this new moon in Gemini, again, I think it's going to be very transformative and hopefully in a really good way. I'm even going to say it's possible. I'm even hopeful that we might even get some sensible, let's say, like legislation around something to do perhaps maybe with guns, or something where if maybe just because of self-interest, because the outpouring is, I hope, maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is just going to be another thing where we go back to sleep again, but one of the benefits of this absolute terrifying and terrible, disgusting recent couple of weeks with these shootings is, again, we've said it before, but it seems like even maybe lawmakers are turning a corner in realizing that they can't keep doing this. Like, you cannot keep acting like this is not going to, this problem's going to go away, or you can just keep floating this propaganda. And I think we're going to see this demonstrations, or this is our call to do something. So on a societal level, this sun, moon, and Ardra is going to demand something. If there's not some meaningful change, again, this is a very explosive potential here. Ardra is Shiva, and Shiva is the destroyer, and it's not just rhetoric. It's not just a game. He's going to want to destroy something. So again, this could be another destruction, destroy, blow things up. And if something meaningful isn't decided or done or acted upon around this time, around this end of June, again, it could really set the stage for this Mars, Rahu stuff. We could see this kind of, again, I'm talking about things like assassinations and blowing up and more destructive events. This could be another one right here. Maybe we'll see some positive change and some adjustment. Again, it's hard to stay hopeful in this world. It really is. It can show where there could be some movement. But again, it's also hard to envision that at this point. I did see in the news yesterday, again, I think what could possibly happen is where Mitch McConnell, just to speak politics, actually directed Cornyn, who is, I think, number 2 in the Senate. Cornyn, this conservative Texas senator who has never met a gun bill he didn't like, never met a gun regulation that he didn't want to do away with. Mitch McConnell directed John Cornyn to work with Democrats toward a sensible solution. God knows what that would mean. The person who has taken more NRA money than almost anybody. So again, I think what might happen is some, symbolic waiting period kind of thing that's going to be held up as the greatest thing ever. Maybe something like that. But when I saw that, I realized these people know that this is a pot about to blow, and they better start doing something here. So we might see some gestures. Either way, we're at a very volatile place socially, culturally, and of course, again, as a free being with agency and self-determination, every day you wake up and you have to breathe, and you have to connect with the moment, and you have to find the beauty. And by the way, there's a lot of it once that Venus, Mercury goes into Taurus. Jupiter is still in Pisces. Saturn is in Aquarius, giving a lot of power and devotion. But it's impossible to do these kind of updates without contextualizing it this way. And I hope it wasn't too dark or too heavy in that context, but I have to be real about these things too. And this is the real world that we're living in. So again, if this was interesting and you want to also see how to understand the 10 most important shifts for your sign, you can go ahead and do that. You've seen the link there the whole time. And again, stay present, keep breathing, keep hopeful, connect with your teachings and gurus, which is what I'll be doing as well. And you have a great June.